Shaka Smart left Texas to take the Marquette job. Wasn't the most surprising thing in the world. That was kind of there was a little bit of scuttle that was the way that it was heading. So what is your take on it? Do you think it was the right decision for him to make a move? Give me all the insight that you have.
I mean, it's easy, okay? Like, it's a win-win for both sides. Like, Texas wanted to fire him 2 years ago, but they couldn't because his buyout was too much. And Shaka needed a change of scenery. And I think Shaka is fortunate. I think we would both agree with that. When you don't win a tournament game in 6 years at a place, that's I don't know what Texas is. I'd say like a top, I don't know, 25, 30 job in America, probably something like that. I mean, there is some.
I think it's a little higher than that.
The fans just don't care. That's why it's that low. Other than Matthew McConaughey, like, most fans don't care.
I could, and not to start this debate, but I could make the argument that the fans not caring is part of the reason that makes the job more appealing. You live in Austin, you have the Texas recruiting base, you don't have pressure, you can survive for 6 years without winning a tournament game. There's the quality of life aspects of it are pretty high. You have you can make all the money in the world, and you don't have the pressure or the stresses of coaching at other jobs. So that's just the argument that I would make for it. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like if you're Marquette, and I haven't been able to confirm this, but I've heard that Porter didn't really want it or didn't want to move this quickly, and Marquette just made a move with Shaka. And I understand if Shaka's got a name, and he did take, he took VCU from the first four to the Final Four. That was in 2011. He hasn't got out of the first weekend since that, right? Like, he's never won a regular season title. And I'm happy for Shaka. Shaka's a good dude. I'm happy for him. I just wouldn't have made this hire if I was Marquette. I would have probably waited for Porter, tried to convince him. It's hard in the middle of a tournament run, too, to try to get a guy to lock into another job. But I think he fit a little bit better. And ultimately, again, I think it's a win for both sides as long as Texas gets Chris Beard. I mean, like Beard, just imagine this, Rob, just imagine this. Chris Beard with Shaka Smart's roster this past season.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be really, really good. The big thing is going to be, there's a couple things that I'm worried about with Beard at Texas and Shaka at Marquette. The first thing I would say is this, that I think that it makes more sense for Shaka to be at a place where you have to build some continuity and build and develop a culture and a program, because I think that's Shaka's biggest strength. There's two things. One, coaching defense, and it's not just the havoc and the pressure stuff. He's really, really good at coaching like half-court defense. Go back and look at what Texas has done over the years while he was there defensively. Like, he's a very good defensive coach, and he's really good at developing culture. We saw that at VCU. We saw it this year at Texas. I think that being at a place where he's not going to be recruiting just one and dones, and he's not going to have to put such a priority on trying to get the Greg Browns and the Mo Bambas and the Jared Allens and the players of that ilk, is going to be something that's better for him. Because if you look at what he does best, it's building that culture, building that family atmosphere, and having guys that are there for 3-4 years. And the bigger thing is, if you're building a defensive basketball program, you want to have older guys that are bigger and stronger and more physical. That's part of the reason why VCU was that successful as it was during his tenure. I also think that it's probably a little bit easier to win in the Big East than it is to win in the Big 12. So I get it. It makes sense. I don't think –
listen, he knew. I mean, he knew the deal. Like, if you're Shaka, you know that you're going to be in the hot seat next year because you lost Abilene Christian. So get a new 5-year start, pretty much.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was.
It's
because
no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Like,
for him, it's the ultimate no-brainer. For Texas, it was a little bit of a probably a decision on their part, right? Like, and really, they kind of made their decision. Like, Shaka knew what the deal was. So, like, this was such a no-brainer on every level. And I think Texas, honestly, was ecstatic that it happened. And they might have even told Chris Del Conte, might have even told Shaka Smart after the Abilene Christian game, hey, you know what? Go, listen, here's the deal. We like you. You're a good guy and all that. But why don't you go and try to get Marquette? Try to get something else. I think it's best for all of them. It worked.
No, I 100% agree. I think if you're Texas, the obvious answer here is going to be Chris Beard. I mean, for all the do we need to list the reasons he graduated from there? He was a manager under
Henderson.
Tom Penders when he was there. He's like Texas through and through. I think the decision is basically going to come down to for him. Does he want it or does he not want it? And is it more important for him to be at a place where he's closer to family, or to be at a place that I'm sure you've heard the same thing, that he's told people that this is his dream job. So at the end of the day, I think it really just comes down to whether or not he wants it, right? It's going to come down to his decision. I think it makes sense for both sides. Is this the right time for him to go and take it? I don't know. If I was him, it'd be it's very hard to put yourself in the position.
I don't think it's that hard. Here's why. Again,
No. I'm not saying it's a hard decision to take it. I'm saying it's hard for us to put ourselves in the shoes of Chris Beard when he's making a decision that isn't entirely about basketball itself. You know what I'm saying? Like part of the reason is like he's got his daughters near him when he's in Lubbock, and there are people where that matters more than being at the perfect job. So I think
he can get a private plane. He'll make enough money. He can buy a damn private plane and get his daughters.
Yeah, I was going to say my gut says he ends up taking it, which is a good thing for the University of Texas.
Yeah, really I think the biggest question is Beard definitely the guy from Chris Del Conte's perspective? Remember, we thought like UCLA would ultimately go after Beard before they hired Mick Cronin. We thought that Indiana would go after Beard. So that'll be kind of a question. Well,
why would I know you don't?
I'm with you.
Answers, but it's like I don't.
This. Right. We don't know why Indiana didn't go after Chris Beard. I said this to you, I think yesterday, the day before. There's something floating around that is hurting Chris Beard with some of these jobs. I don't know what it is. I don't understand it. You know how I feel about Chris Beard. I think I talked to Kevin Durant yesterday about it. Now, Kevin Durant wants like Royale Ivy. And he said, I want it in the family. I said, well, Chris Beard like went to school at Texas, right? I know he's not like part of your Texas family, the NBA Texas family, but this guy did go to Texas. And I think that's why ultimately Chris Beard takes the job if it's offered to him with the right terms. It's, he was a student at Texas, and he understands too, like in Lubbock, it's difficult to get some of these. He's done it. He got him an McDonald's All-American and Amari Burnett, but it's difficult to get those guys. Where at Texas, it's a whole lot easier to be able to fight for a top 25 recruit, for the top transfers. He's been able to do it only because of his success in Lubbock, but can you continue that success and have a chance to win national titles? That's what drives Chris Beard. He wants to win national titles. And I think in his mind, ultimately the decision will come down to, it's going to be easier for me to be able to accomplish that at Texas than it is at Texas Tech.
Yeah, and this also brings up a little bit of a point that I made about Indiana in a column I wrote yesterday, in that when Marquette fired Wojo, they had a very clear plan for what they wanted to do. They were going to go after Porter Moser, and if they couldn't lock something down quickly, Porter Moser, they had a fallback plan with Shaka Smart. Now, honestly, I don't even know if Shaka was necessarily the fallback plan, but they had two very clear targets that were both pretty easily attainable for them to be able to get, right? Whereas Indiana's plan was we're going to fire Archie, and then we don't really know. It's been 11 days. The only info that we've really gotten out of it is there's been rumors about a bunch of former IU guys, and then they've tried to get Brad Stevens and they've tried to get Chris Holtman. And to me, if you're going to pull the trigger on Archie and you're going to make that decision when you make it, you have to have something better in place, knowing the day and age and knowing that fan base that you have, because all that's going to happen is people are just going to start getting more and more anxious and more freaked out and more worried about what the next step is going to be. So I don't necessarily think that Indiana was wrong for firing Archie. I don't even blame Indiana fans for having a certain level of expectations for their program. Like you should, if you are, you should want your team to be great, especially if you're Indiana, right?
Yeah.
Indiana basketball, the heritage and tradition. So I don't blame them for it. And look, I'm personally a believer that if you realize you've made the wrong hire, ripping off the Band-Aid and starting over sooner rather than later is probably the best thing to do. And I think it was pretty clear that, like Archie, it just wasn't working at Indiana. So I don't think the only issue that I have with the entire process is that they made that decision and they didn't have a clear plan for what they were going to do. Because if they did, then Chris Beard wouldn't be like would already have said no, would already have had like that already would have happened. They were already gone down that path. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. Just it seems like they're kind of flying by the.
No, they're trying to. Yeah, I mean, listen, they tried. They went after Chris Holtman. He didn't take it, and I know all the Indiana fans are thinking. It was amazing on Twitter yesterday when I tweeted out and Greg Doyle, and there's probably nobody more plugged in Indiana than Greg Doyle. And then Jeff Rabjohns basically said Scott Dolson has not reached out to Chris Holtman. And I'm like, you know how many job searches I've done, Rob, in my career? You know how many I've had to cover, probably? And how many I've probably broken? Like, I think I know how this shit works. And it works that often the reason that so many of them hire search firms is for plausible deniability. So if anybody asks and says, well, Scott Dolson, did you ever talk to Chris Holtman? Now, he didn't hire a search firm, but you can have it through your senior associate AD. You can have it through one of your buddies who's an AD, whatever it is, reach out and do all the work. So you can say, no, I never talked to Chris Holtman. Because at Indiana, they can't swing and keep missing. Right? Then it looks like a clown show. And Scott Dolson knows how that looks for him. So he's got to try to go under the radar, especially when you're pursuing a fellow Big Ten coach. You got to be careful there. Mm-hmm. So I think ultimately, again, I know ultimately that's how this shit works. It works with search firms providing cover generally. That's why they're hired. They're not hired for the background checks for the most part. They're hired for cover. And that's what happened here. So any Indiana fans who actually believe that nobody from Indiana reached out to nobody from Chris Holtman's camp and pursued him is naive and out of their mind. It happened.
Yeah, it happened. I think the best way to phrase it is just, the sources that you will trust, and I'm going to go ahead and trust what you have to say, and I'm going to trust what Greg Doyle.
I love Jeff Rabjohns, and let me say that I love Rabby. He's one of the people I absolutely love in this business and have known him forever. But I think it's semantics the way he wrote it. I'll say that he's not wrong. Scott Dolson never reached out to Chris Holtman or his camp. He's right. He's right about that. There are plenty of other people that work with Scott Dolson or that he knows that could have reached out and said, hey, we really want Chris Holtman. He's our guy. That's how it happened.
All right. Before we get into today's slate, Goodman, we have one question in the chat that I want you to answer.
Yeah, what do we got?
Look at the screen. Look at the screen.
Oh, Jokic for Indiana.
Let's move on to today's slate.
He probably thinks he is.